Hey everyone, Ryan Young, KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu. I hope you're doing well. You know, one of the most controversial things that I can ever talk about with regard to training is the belt and how important the belt is to a lot of people. And it really shouldn't be, but it is. So let's kind of go into this again. So I was having a conversation with a gentleman a while back, and he was telling me that he's just done with the whole system of belts because he's been training for about 10 years, got his brown belt from his instructor of many years, but felt he was limited on his ranking because he was told that the school that he was at is a very tough school, very well known in his area, among other schools, right? But that he got up to brown belt and he is now discouraged because there's not really a set of criteria, objective criteria for him to go by to get his black belt. And you know, the black belt, like with any belt actually, it really, if you're training with an instructor, you ever notice that if you, let's say you're a purple belt somewhere and then you go to another school, and this other school, let's say you've been a purple belt for 3 years now, you go to another school and you find that you're wearing that purple belt for another 2, 3, 4 years maybe, right? If you're at your old school, you might have progressed to the brown and maybe the black belt by now, but here you are at this new school and you're still wearing a purple belt. How does that happen? Well, I can kind of tell you why. First of all, your new school may have a curriculum, in which case you're now responsible for knowing the curriculum from white all the way to your current level belt, which in this case, in this example, is purple. So you need to know everything. Now, how long it takes for you to learn it, that's really up to you. You know, some schools, though, they don't have a curriculum from which you can go on. You can't just get a syllabus and go, okay, here's what you need to know from white to purple to where you are right now in our school. So, you know, have at it. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll kind of go over it with you. There is none of that. It's just, you just train here for a while and I'll belt you appropriately, which for this particular gentleman, I can get why he's thinking to himself, if you don't give me a set of criteria, then I'm going to move on. So he now goes and moves on to another school with their own set of criteria. But I don't think that there is one that goes from, that they determines black belt. So as a result, he's kind of discouraged and he starts looking for an organization. And an organization that might have on their website a strict line of criteria that you need to go to, basically boxes you need to check off to be a black belt. And then that way he can be a black belt under an association rather than under a direct professor. So one of the things he mentions is, he tells me, hey Ryan, take a look at the USJJA, US Jiu-Jitsu Association, or Federation, USJJF, I think it is. And he also talks about the JJGF, which is Hickson's Federation, and then how they need to have a set of criteria. In fact, I think he says the US Jiu-Jitsu Federation does have a set of criteria from which he could go by, and then he could then become a black belt via the organization, not via a professor, so to speak. So I come from the old school where you don't question your professor. You just do what you're told to do, and then you become ranked appropriately as time or as the years go on. And in fact, many of you know from my personal journey, I started as a white belt with House and Gracie in 1989, and I think in 1991 maybe, 1990 or 91, I got my blue belt from Helson. I don't know exactly when it was. All I know is when I left Hawaii in 1992 May, I was a 2-stripe blue with Helson. And then I moved to California and trained at the Gracie Academy and maybe got one more stripe on my blue there, and then also trained at Hickson's place on Pico Boulevard. So I trained at 2 places at once when I was in California. I think I did Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at the Gracie Academy, and I did Monday, Wednesday, Friday at Hickson's place. So I trained like 6 days a week. And I think I got my third stripe at the Gracie Academy, my fourth stripe, my purple belt, my first stripe, my second stripe, and my purple belt from Hickson. Maybe my third, I'm not sure. And then several years later, I'd probably say late 1990s, I moved over to Kenny Gabrielson's place, and then got my fourth stripe on my purple. He gave me my brown, but I didn't put it on. This is like in the late 90s. I was in my disrespectful days, as you can say, and ended up leaving the belt in the drawer at the office. Never put it on, just kept wearing my purple belt. And then ended up leaving Kenny's place, trained with Brad Jackson for a number of years, and I didn't train that much. For about I was wearing a purple belt for about 10 years. And then, probably because a lot of it was I wasn't training as much as I really should. And then what happened was in 2007, Brad gave me my brown belt. And in 2008, I went over to Dave Kama's place. And it wasn't until March of 2012 that I actually got my black belt. So I went to Dave Kama's place as a brown belt, and I remained as a black belt for about 4 more years. I had to learn a system and learn how to do things the way he wanted me to do them. Because basically the way I looked at it was, and this is not anything he told me to do, it was just I looked at what he did, and if what he did was different from what I did, I learned to do it his way, and I discarded the way that I came in doing it. I just completely said, okay, so about 80% of my jiu-jitsu I threw out. I kept about 20% of it, which was still common to what he and I did, and a lot, of course, a lot of it I learned when I was at Hickson's place too, and I just kept doing it. So it took me 4 years as a brown belt while under Dave to get my black belt. But not once in any of those years that I've been training did I ever ask for my belt. Not once did I ever say, man, if I keep training here, I'll never get my black belt. I'll never get this. And the belt really was not ever an issue for me. And it's very odd for me to have somebody ask for the belt. Or, and I always say word it differently. Instead of asking for a belt, ask professor, coach, Ryan, whatever. What is the next thing that you want me to work on? Let me show you. Now work on that. And, me myself as an instructor, I keep a mental note of what I tell people to work on. And, and I make sure they do. I'll walk in next time I see them, and I'll see, are they doing what I asked them to work on? Okay, and I'll review it with them. Okay, you still working on what I told you to? Yeah, okay. It's up to them at that point. They either keep working on what I tell them to until I change it up, or most of the time they start working on something else. That's their call. It slows them down, but that's still their call. I can take them so far, but they need to do what I ask them to, or if they ask me, I tell them, and they need to do what I tell them to do until such time as I tell them to move on. But we do have our curriculum on the wall for the white to blue, and then for blue to purple, it's the same cycle over, but we now add details. Purple to brown, same thing. We add a few more things, but we go deeper into the information that we taught at white belt. And then brown to black is just finishing up details. It's, are they polished in their self-defense? Are they polished in their white to blue, blue to purple, purple to brown curriculum? Not so much they learn new things. We're always learning new things, but as far as a curriculum, there's nothing really new for me to give them at that point. So if someone were to ask me, is there a checklist of things I can do to get from brown to black? The answer is no, not really. It really comes down to, let me kind of watch you and let me determine when you get it. And I'm not unfair about belts, because believe me, the thing that really gives me the most pleasure, and I've said this before in other videos, is for me to belt a student, for me to promote a student. Why? Because it shows a couple of things. It shows a job well done on the student's end and a job well done on my end. But if somebody asks for a belt, then to me they're not ready for a belt. Now, I get this person's contention that they want to know what the next steps are. They want to keep pushing forward, and I get it. But I guess I'm from the old school, and that just doesn't really work. Now, and that's the part that he's kind of disgusted by. He wants to have a checklist, and he wants to be able to go off it, and I get it. But here's the thing that's different with regard to jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general, is that an instructor who promotes a student of his, he's putting his personal stamp on that student, right? If I give someone a blue belt, they are now a Kama Jiu-Jitsu blue belt. They're not just any blue belt, they're a Kama Jiu-Jitsu blue belt. Same for purple, same for brown. And black, though, it's a higher level of personal touch to it. So it's now, yes, I got my black belt from Dave Kama. Right? I am representing him now. It's not just a matter, I didn't just get a Kama Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I got my black belt from Dave Kama. And that's something that means a lot to me, and it means a lot to him. And when I put the black belt on Zach Womack, it meant a lot to me to put the belt onto him. So I'm not really just going to give someone a criteria to go by and they're automatically going to be a black belt. Elo Gracie he was known for his criteria. I think he had a list of 15 or 20 different things that someone had to, characteristics he wanted to, in order to give somebody a black belt. And they were stuff like being cheerful, showing up on time to teach classes. I don't know, I can't remember exactly what they were, but those are a couple things that kind of stuck in my head. And just because somebody meets certain criteria doesn't mean I'm going to give them a black belt. Not one from me, at least. Sure, you get all the objective criteria, but there's still subjective criteria. And I think that's one of the things that this gentleman doesn't really get. I mean, he does, he knows, but he doesn't want to go with it. He wants his own system. And the thing is, I mentioned the USJJF. So what I did was actually called Brian Walsh, who's one of the administrators or the heads of the organization, and spoke to him about that and said, is your system set up to where there's a list of objective criteria that one can go by to become a black belt and be able to be a USJJF black belt? He says yes and no. Yes, in that, yes, we do have a curriculum that is defined, but no, in that you need to be certified, vouched for, signed by, under a USJJF professor. Which means that this gentleman, if he were to go through the USJJF route, from the way I understand it, he actually needs to go to the association, find an instructor who is in the association that is near him, or whatever one he wants, and he needs to meet with him and train under him. So back to the old school criteria again. Yep, I'm sorry, it's just, there are people, though, who will do that. If you go into their dojo, academy, school, whatever you want to call it, and you take a few classes from him and you beat him, he will promote you. I do know professors, or I have known of professors who did that, where they would just go, you know what, you shouldn't be wearing this belt, you should be wearing another belt. And the way I look at it is, I want to talk to his old instructor. If I look at it and this student thinks that he needs to be higher belted, right? If he comes in a purple belt, like I mentioned earlier, and he thinks, I really should be a brown. In fact, I have had people that would do that. They would call me, hey, Ryan, I'm looking to come down to your school and train. Okay, fine. Do you train now? Yes. Where do you train? I train at XYZ Academy. Okay, what belt are you? Well, I'm a 3-stripe white, but I really should be a blue. So then I'm automatically thinking, okay, if you should be a blue, why are you wearing a 3-stripe white belt? Why did your instructor not give you a blue? More often than not, when I meet them, I see their lack of understanding for certain fundamental concepts that they need to know at the blue belt level, which is why in my mind I go, okay, well, you're not a blue belt. A lot of people some people like to think they're above what they are. Well, I am wearing a blue belt, but I've been a blue belt for 10 years. I should be wearing a purple belt. It's just that I haven't been at a school long enough to get a promotion. Okay, that's another one I've heard. And then when I see them, I'm like, no, you're still a blue belt. So it's hard, for you to be your own expert. And that's really the thing. If you have a professor who you trust, who is an expert, who knows what he's doing, and he knows what is and what is not, then my suggestion is just to go to him and trust him. If it takes years, then it takes years. It's on you. It's not on him. Now, if he may have some kind of criteria. I need to know you for 5 years before I give you any kind of rank. Well, then that's what it is. I know it's sometimes a hard pill to swallow. But what I've learned with jiu-jitsu is that it usually pays to just stay put, right? Don't try to leave to get a promotion, because what will happen is you'll leave to get your promotion, and guess what? Guys that stayed put, they end up getting promoted. And in fact, a lot of times you end up stagnating in your ability. In fact, I know of several people who have done that. They've left an academy, and other friends of theirs have stayed put in their academy, and they've been off on different trajectories. And in fact, I'm one of those. I left, and there were friends that stuck around at schools that I left, and they ended up not only ranking faster than me, they were better than me. Right? It was just my fault, because what happened was every time you make progress, and you leave at this pinnacle here at one school, and guess what? You're at the new school, and they have a new system, so you now drop down to here. In the meantime, your friends are at that pinnacle you were at, and they continue up, right? Guess what? I dropped, and now I have to move up. And then I end up getting disgusted or discouraged or whatever you want to call it, and I jump out, and I move to another school, and I drop again. I come up, drop again, come up, drop again. In the meantime, friends are doing this, right? My cousin, who runs Taco Jiu-Jitsu in Honolulu, Hawaii, a little plug for him, TAKO Jiu-Jitsu. I gave him his first lesson when I was a purple belt in 1995. First jiu-jitsu lesson. And he got his black belt, I want to say around 2008. I didn't get mine until 2012. Right? He stuck with one instructor the whole time. Actually, no, he started with some friends of mine and then moved over to another school after the first 6 months to a year, and then was with that instructor the entire time. So he learned their system, he learned how they did it, and he progressed. And 13 years to black belt. That's a fair amount of years to go before he gets his black belt. But he stayed put. Whereas in that period of time, I probably was at 2 or 3 different schools versus him. Sometimes it's better just to stay with the professor you're at. If you respect the professor you're at, if your professor's a good teacher, don't think that you should be a certain belt and be pissed off because you don't get it. Because you're not going to get what you're looking for. I mean, you can always just grab a belt and put it on, right? That's the easiest thing to do. Just go to KAATARO, shameless plug there, KAATARO, KAATARO.com, and go order your belt and just tell them Kama Jiu-Jitsu sent you. In fact, there's probably a link in our description. They make nice belts, by the way. I have like 5 of them. And just go call them and tell them I'm going to order a black belt, and I want professor bars, and I want degrees, all this kind of stuff. Order whatever you want. Put it on. But if you want to be vouched for, you need to go by that professor's timeline, not yours. Anyway, I hope this helps to kind of enlighten you a little bit on how the belt system goes, and how there is an objective part, but there's also a subjective part that you need to respect if you want it from a certain person. Because we all have our subjective criteria before we give a black belt to you. Anyway, that's all I got. Come see us at one of our locations. We've got Kama Jiu-Jitsu Irvine. We've got Kama Jiu-Jitsu Flower Mound, which is Dallas, Texas. And we've got Kama Jiu-Jitsu in Austin, Texas. Also, come visit us at KamaJiu-JitsuOnline.com and try one of our free 3-day trials to our online curriculum. Videos done by Master Dave Kama himself, teaching Kama Jiu-Jitsu. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Take care and happy training. Bye now.